Puppet Master is a 1989 horror film directed by David Schmoller, the guy who brought us Tourist Trap and Crawl Space, and was produced by Charles Band, the founder and operator of Full Moon Features. Now, I could make a full video on Full Moon, and I very well might. Full Moon has been around since the 70s, and is known for schlock horror, but I think this little anecdote will serve you well. I got from Walmart this collection of 9 Puppet Master films for $5. $4.99, 9 movies. Which, if that says anything about the Puppet Master franchise, I don't know what does. There is not a longer-running franchise in horror than Puppet Master. Yeah, even Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees have to take a step back for the puppets, for Puppet Master, because this film inspired so many sequels, and if the $4.99 price tag on 9 of them doesn't say anything, this is a clear and cut example of B-movie schlock horror. So, I should jump into what this movie's actually about. Puppet Master features a man who is a puppet master, which I'll get to, by the name of Andrew Tolan, and sometimes changed to Andre Tolton. He is a puppet master, which essentially means he creates marionettes, little puppet dolls, and he gives life to them through some sort of magic. And really, you find out in the later films, I've seen the first 3, with the first and third one being pretty good, and the second one being, you find out that he is actually putting the souls of dead people into little puppets to do what he wants them to do. And at the beginning of the movie, and this kind of gets into a spoiler, but not really, because it's not really what the movie's about, Andrew realizes, because he's Jewish, that the Nazis are trying to kidnap him to force him to use his Puppet Master powers to help the Nazis control the world. And, of course, right when the Nazis burst in, he shoots himself so they can never get to his secrets, and his puppets must live on Bodega Bay, which is on the coast, this hotel where he was. And years later, there is another suicide, a similar suicide, involving a man who was kind of a psychic, and his psychic medium friends, dream interpreters, psychics, people with spiritual gifts, I guess, show up to the hotel to solve the mystery of why he killed himself in the first place, and in the process, discover a group of killer puppets. And that is where the movie takes a turn. Because, like I said, this movie is a clear and cut example of schlock cinema. Puppet Master isn't The Shining, it isn't The Exorcist, this is not Silence of the Lambs. Puppet Master, you have to go into it knowing what you're gonna get. This is a movie about killer puppets and people with psychic powers getting murdered in a hotel. And like I said before, Full Moon is known for doing this. Tourist Trap was a very similar film. Actually, Tourist Trap is more in line with Texas Chainsaw, but that's for another time. They've also done, of recent, the Killer Bong and Ginger Dead Man movies, if that says anything. And even more recently, a Corona Zombies movie. They've done this forever. But, like I said, Puppet Master is their longest running series of films, with even crossovers with movies like Demonic Toys, which is also a Full Moon label. So, like I said, there are these psychics that get targeted by puppets, and the story doesn't really make any sense. The puppets are evil, but then they're good at the end. I don't want to spoil too much, but you don't really know what the motivations of the puppets are, but they're honestly entertaining to watch. The puppeteering is actually quite interesting. They used a mix of stop motion and real puppetry to get the shots, with sometimes a team of multiple people moving the various puppets. And in some shots, when they're running or walking or jumping, they're actually stop motion figures, and some of the scenes even took 2 days to make 17 seconds of film, which I respect. I think the artistry in the movie is actually pretty good. And while it's not the most beautiful movie, it certainly had heart. And what was interesting is, and I read this up online with some trivia facts, that Charles Band always wanted this movie to be direct-to-DVD, direct-to-video, or VHS at the time, really. But the director and all of the crew were expecting a traditional theatrical release, so they put in the effort to make this a legitimate film. And Charles Band said, no, you know what, I'm going to put it on direct-to-video because that's where he saw the market going. And like I said, I could talk about Full Moon and Charles Band forever, but he has kept the label of direct-to-video strong, and it all started with this movie. In fact, the director of this movie still hasn't received full payment for his work and the residuals to this movie because Charles Band wanted more control over it. And there was even a remake, a readaptation, if you will, a few years ago called The Littlest Reich, Puppet Master, of course. There's more about this movie behind the scenes than in the movie. The movie is essentially these psychics staying overnight at the hotel trying to solve this mystery about the suicide when the puppets show up and start offing them one by one. And there are a few different puppets, including Blade, which is probably the most notorious puppet. He's the one featured here on the DVD case. You also have Pinhead. He's a puppet with large hands that can strangle people. They actually used a little woman's hands to get some of the shots that they needed. There's one with a drill on his head. You have one of my favorites, Leech Woman, who literally spits leeches, and you find out later that she's actually Andrew Tolan's wife in the third one. It goes really weird. And then there's also a little clown marionette that spins his head. There are a lot of different puppets in the movie that do the bidding of the evil, which I don't want to spoil for anybody in case you want to check out Puppet Master. But it's a creative movie. It's a fun movie. It kept my interest. Some scenes with the people get a little slow. And shockingly, for one of these B movies, the puppets aren't in the movie all that much. In fact, I read up online that they're only in 5 minutes of this movie, which is pretty remarkable. There are a lot of POV shots of the puppets running along on the ground, which I think was pretty interesting, except they are very obvious and you could clearly see them if you were in the movie, so that didn't make any sense, because people are like, what? They just step over it. But the movie is fun. I think it's a good example of schlock horror cinema. Do not go into this movie expecting it to be Halloween or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is Puppet Master we're dealing with. A Full Moon feature, and actually a pretty decent start to what would later become a really schlocky and outrageous series. Probably so far, Puppet Master 3 might be my favorite in the lineup, because it introduces a new puppet, which I really like, Six Shooter. He has 6 arms, and he's a cowboy. And on top of that, it takes place during World War II, where Andrew, and his wife are trying to escape the Nazis. And I like that aspect of this series. There's a lot of Nazi-ism in the movie, and the conflict between the Jewish people and the Nazis that happens during World War II and the post-World War II era. And it's really weird because the main puppet, Blade, kind of looks like a little Nazi. So, suffice it to say, Puppet Master is a very intriguing horror film. Not one of my favorite horror films, but certainly one of the most interesting schlocky B horror movies. For the fun of it, I'm going to give Puppet Master a 3.5 out of 5 skulls on the R.I.P. Reviews rating scale. I could probably give it a 3, but if you go into it with the right attitude, you'll probably have a fun time. But do not expect it to make any sense, because this script did not make sense to me. Stuff happens for no reason, but take it with a grain of salt and have a little bit of fun watching it. This is a great popcorn movie. It's not very scary, but it does have some pretty creative looking puppets. And for that reason, I applaud you, Puppet Master, and I even applaud you, Full Moon. Thank you for watching this review. In the comments below, let me know, how many of the Puppet Master movies have you seen? Because there are like more than 13 of them. It's very, very expansive. Again, thank you for watching, and remember as always, for all things Halloween, this